Hey everybody, thanks for coming. Hope you're enjoying the day. I'm here to talk to you about getting back to basics with Agile development, first principles. So many of you know me already. If you don't, come talk to me. We should know each other. Let's hang out. But many of you know me, know the journey I've been on over the last year or so. I left my full-time role as CTO and embarked on this sort of journey to be a fractional CTO with this thesis of bringing a grand unified theory of product development. So a seamless integration between product, UI, UX, engineering, and operations, breaking down all the silos, right? It's one team, it's one process, through user-centered design and strong UX discipline. Everything that Vidya said, ditto that, right? So bringing the engineers more in line with the customers, with the goals of the business, helping product management and so on understand the language of engineering. This is where I focus. And so I got out there in the world and I dug in with these companies and came in on this premise and realized that so many of these companies just didn't even get the basics down of execution. They didn't even understand how to build a thing, right, and get it out the door. You may adopt a methodology like Scrum or a process like Scrum, but if you don't apply the principles behind it, you're just applying dogma. And so I've actually ended up sort of pivoting what I'm doing to focus more on agile coaching, training, and mentorship, to focus on building an effective engineering organization and then kind of working my way, sort of spreading my tendrils out from there. And then, throughout this, having conversations with many of you and realizing that, well, even a lot of the people in this room don't actually get it. We intellectually understand the principles and understand what it means to be agile, but we're not actually practicing what we preach. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to take the Agile Manifesto, break it up into various themes and kind of distill it. And what I'd like for you guys to do is when we get to that part, to just kind of take a note of the various themes and do a self-assessment. How much of this are you actually living in your organization day to day? So to kind of start out, right, so I'm questioning my assumptions. I'm breaking things down. How did we get here? I thought that we had all agreed a long time ago that waterfall doesn't work, primarily because we suck at predicting the future. It's great to understand up front your business case and understand your users and set objectives and have goals and roadmaps and so on. And now you've got this deadline out there in the future that you're supposed to meet with a perfectly refined product with free of bugs, on time and under budget, right? That's what always happens. Of course not. And so, what ends up happening is that, leadership sets this goal, they set this deadline, and then you go off and you try to work on something for a while, and then when the deadline approaches, you say, actually, we don't have that. Everyone gets all flustered, and you start cutting corners. You compromise your quality, you squeeze QA, you abandon your process, and everything devolves into chaos, right? So we said, well, okay, we're really bad at predicting the future, and so let's just not do that and just start doing things in 2-week cycles, right? We're really good at predicting at least 2 weeks ahead of time, right? Maybe. Okay, so let's do Agile then. And so we take Scrum, we take that book off the shelf, and we start we throw away documentation and we throw away process, and basically what we do is we just take that project and we just start cutting it up into 2-week increments, right? Because the mindset hasn't shifted around getting away from, well, when am I going to get the whole thing and how much is it going to cost me? And so we let ourselves get sort of backed into that corner of making some sort of unrealistic commitment, and then we're just going to start doing things in 2-week cycles. Everything is important, so nothing is important. We get really busy pushing features, and then we say, man, this sprint planning thing, it's taking 2 hours, really? Is it going to take 2 hours? And what is this retrospective anyway? Are we really supposed to sit around here and kumbaya or just sit here and talk trash about product management? And when things get rough, we abandon all that. So we don't focus on continuous improvement. We don't focus on investing in quality and automation and architecture and so on. And then leadership comes back and they say, well, you didn't commit anything to me, but everything just feels late, right? Work faster, work harder. And so then you cut corners again and you compromise quality because now you don't even have a QA process, just you push things straight to production. You abandon the process and it devolves into chaos. Both of these turn into what I call the assembly line model. And it's not the kind of assembly line where everything moves along very smoothly and it's very consistent in the product output. It's more like this kind of assembly line where you've got this endless flow of work. You don't know where the work is coming from. You don't know where it's going, but it's just an avalanche of work that's incoherent, right? It's not tied together into any sort of vision or story. You've either got a top-down process or no process at all. You've got a lot of context switching because you don't have any clear sets of priorities and you're kind of just going after the squeaky wheel. You have a lack of integration between business and engineering. Again, you have this inability to make commitments and predict the future, and you're not investing in your work process and so on, and everything breaks down. So how we got here. So there was this promise that we were sold of what Agile was supposed to do for us. And that promise still holds true if you apply the principles, not worry so much about the process. And so the promise is that, well, you maximize your business value because you are continuously delivering the highest value work to the customer. Your risk goes down because you're adding value, and as time goes on, you're just iteratively increasing the value the customer receives. The visibility, the transparency is there. So rather than just going off and working in a lab for several months and then coming back with a finished product, you're having these constant feedback loops and touch points with your product team, and with your customers. And you're truly able to be adaptable, not only in your work process, but in actually how you design your systems to allow you to change direction. And I'll obviously get into that into more detail. Okay, sorry about the eye chart. Don't worry about reading it so much because I have these handy dandy little call outs. So there's just a couple words here that you need to take away. But again, here's where I break this into themes. And I'd like for you to just sort of jot down and now or later think about how you're actually applying these principles in your organization here. So the first one, first and foremost, which I always tout, is engaging with the business. Again, the flip side of what Vidya just talked about. I will challenge the myth that I hear people say that engineers don't care about the business, they don't care about the users, they just want to write code. I think that's false. I think that in a lot of cases we might be relegated to that, because of our circumstances. But I have found that in organizations where the engineers are tied into a cause, to a purpose, they simply perform better. Their morale is higher, their productivity is higher. You don't need very detailed requirements because they intuitively understand, what it means to be, what the user's conventions are, and so on. So the principles say business people and developers must work together daily, face to face. They must, the engineering team must be in support of the business goals. So it's not just don't bother me, I'm building my code, or every time you come to me with a change, you're simply an inconvenience to me. It's that we are the team that is making or breaking this company, right? We're part of the product team, and if we don't understand that that's our role, we're not a services arm of the organization. We are this core foundational enabling team that ultimately creates the customer value. So ensuring that your engineers are connected with other aspects of the business and also connecting with our users as well. Again, I'll echo what Vidya said, right? You should have real personal connections with your users. You should create empathy for them. And as CTOs, it's our job to ensure that all of our engineers are thinking in this way. So, in my one-on-ones with my engineers, that is my time to actually teach them and help them understand how their work ties into the big picture, or how the work that they're doing impacts our customers, and help to get them bought into that success. Okay, the next big one is continuous delivery. So early and continuous delivery of valuable software. The key word here is valuable. So you want to understand what is valuable to the customer. And you do that through, again, user-centered design, engagement with your product owner, and strong product ownership and UX discipline, et cetera. And then be able to make the judgment call about what is the highest value work, and then strive to get that in front of the customer to deliver that value as quickly as possible, and then iterate on it, right? So not over-engineering, not gold plating, but thinking about, okay, we have this problem that we need to solve. We're creative individuals here. We want to build a solution to that problem, but we want to get the lowest fidelity functional version, right? Minimum viable feature, whatever you call it, so that we can start solving the problem for the user, gain feedback, and either enhance it because it turned out really great, or abandon it because our assumptions were invalid. And creating these feedback loops, so delivering working software frequently, right? So this concept of always be shipping. I thought everyone knew this, but apparently that a lot of folks don't know that when you get to the end of a sprint, every task that's in that done column is supposed to be ready to ship. It's a small fraction of organizations that truly get to continuous delivery where, at the end of the day or multiple times a day, everything's going to production because they've got all their automated tests fully fleshed out and everything. But at the very least, when you call something done, it means it's ready to go. It's ready to ship it to production. Okay, so having a strong process for prioritizing the most valuable work through the road mapping and through your sprint planning process, and investing in automation as well, right? Working towards that test-driven CI/CD type of model over time. Continuous improvement. I would argue that this is the most important. I think it's a toss-up between engagement with the business and continuous improvement. And in fact, when I think about it, that's exactly what my last slide says. So yes, they are both the most important things. So forget about the process. Forget about the dogma. Too many organizations say, okay, we've got this Scrum Bible, and we're doing Scrum now, and so we're good, right? Everything's fine. We've solved all of our problems. And that turns out to be not the case. And a lot of folks don't quite understand the value of the retrospective. When I get in there and we actually hold a retrospective and we start creating what I call a program for continuous improvement, things start to change very rapidly. So a couple things you can do is have a suggestion box, right? So throughout the sprint, if there's anything that isn't working, if there's any challenges that you face through the execution of that, you just take a note, right, and submit it to a wiki page, or even just take a note somewhere. But when you get to the retrospective, you're sort of reviewing the things that you've already said had gone wrong. And then you create a program of accountability and traceability, okay? So everything that comes up, there has to be, that is your opportunity to brainstorm solutions. And then somebody owns it, and that work goes into the backlog. And whatever it is, whether it's a change in process, change in communication, investing in a tool, what have you, you actually strive to get it done and you hold people accountable to it. And then when you get to the next retrospective, you actually go back to what was done last time and you measure the impact. And if something was successful, you keep it and you spread it around the organization. And if it wasn't successful, you kill it and you spread that around the organization so that the good ideas survive and thrive and the bad ideas disappear. And again, striving towards a sustainable model of development, right? So we call them sprints, but it's a marathon. And it's a marathon that never ends as long as you're with the company. And so you're constantly looking for variance, for churn, for anything that causes again the smoothness of the process to break down. Those are the areas that you want to focus on for continuous improvement. Building effective teams. So what I look for in an effective agile team is that they have all the power, the skills, the information, the authority, and so on to get the job done. So anytime there's an external dependency, anytime there is some skill, some expert outside of the team that they have to draw from, anytime that there is an approval process or cycle in order to get some things done, this is where agility breaks down. This is where you get blocked. This is where you get to the end of your sprint and you feel defeated because you didn't accomplish what you set out to do and it wasn't within your control. And so always strive to make sure that the team is dedicated, that they have everything they need. You know, the engineers should be T-shaped. You should be investing in cross-training and so on so that they have all the skills. They need to have full authority over the team. So one example that I like to give that I've done in the past that kind of sets people aback is the team actually has the authority to fire a member of the team. So they can vote somebody off of the team essentially if they're not playing well with others. And then it's the manager's role to either find them a new team or actually let them go. And what this does is it actually allows the team to become accountable to one another, right? There's no getting away with it where, well, my manager isn't going to see, and so I'm just going to skirt by, or I'm going to, lean on others to get things done. We're all in this together. Another is actually providing incentives for them that are team-based as opposed to individual-based, right? So your reviews and your bonuses and all those things are based on the success and the output of the team. We sink or swim together. And what that does is if somebody else is failing in the team, the rest of the team will rally around them and support them, right? And as long as they're showing that they're invested in the cause and they're really there with the right reasons, we should all be able to and be willing to train them and support them and give them the skills we need. And what ends up happening is then people become more skilled. There's more cross-training. There's the ability for people to back each other up and solve those tough problems so that you don't have these syndromes where there's one or two people who can solve a problem, and if they ever go on vacation, nothing gets done. Okay. Delivering quality software. Okay, so quality is always first. Just because you're being agile and you're iterating and so on doesn't mean that you get to put out poor quality code. In fact, it's the opposite. So by developing quality code and by developing a quality architecture, you actually enable yourself to be more nimble and to move more quickly, right? So if you have a strong microservices framework or an object-oriented design, it allows you to quickly take these building blocks and put them together and create something new, right? If you have a strong test automation framework, then and a strong continuous deployment pipeline, then you can rapidly build something and put it out into production without so much worry that it's going to break, right? So investing in quality code that works the first time means that there's less rework and there's less operational support that needs to be done, which allows you to focus more on delivering more value. So I understand that early in the life cycle of a product, you're doing an MVP. You want to kind of hash something together, but you can still design an architecture in such a way that that enables you to be agile, to be able to replace things, to decouple things, to create abstraction layers, and I'll get into that in a second. Okay, so those are the principles. Now I want to tie it into purely the technical realm and how this really applies to you as a CTO. Being agile is not just about a work process, right? It's not just about the flow of work from vision to execution. It's actually how you design your systems to begin with, right? So again, strong architecture, object-oriented design, making things modular, right? So think of what a modular system is. It's a series of interchangeable components with strong standard interfaces, adapters between them that allow you to replace things, upgrade things, right? Change the form of them so that they can, change the function of what they do. So think about it being in an agile way. You build something that does a certain thing, and if at a certain point in the future you decide it should do something else, well, plug and play, right? So that means, again, creating strong abstraction layers, API layers, microservices, especially at the data model. I'm a data guy, very long time. I spent a lot of time in the analytics and sort of data modeling world. If there's one area where I think you should focus, it's abstracting the data model from the implementation because there's a lot of refactoring that needs to happen in the data model that a lot of times doesn't happen because there's so much code that ties into it. So we're all familiar with refactoring our code, but so many of us don't refactor our data model because it's too difficult, because we've got all those tendrils built into it, right? So normalization is one way of refactoring your data model, right? So take big flat tables and spread them out into a number of small tables with links. Again, test and deployment automation, right? Make it easier for you to push things out rapidly without being bogged down with QA or regression. Invest in documentation, okay? We said that Agile means throw away documentation, maybe from a specification standpoint, right? But in terms of your software, good commenting, good, good documentation of your systems will allow people to, again, to move between different teams, to allow you to bring on new people quickly and change out the talent, make the talent modular as well, because you're increasing that onboarding pace. Creating operational support tools, right? So don't get yourselves bogged down in an operational role. Never solve the same technical problem twice. If you have something that an engineer has to do, build a tool around it and then hand that tool off to somebody else in the business so that you don't have to call on engineering to do that and they can continue providing value. Logging, monitoring, alerts, all these things that just free you up from the operational, the firefighting mode and allow you to focus on providing continuous value. So again, taking these things and I'm just distilling down into what I consider the sort of, the white hot essence of what agility means. And there's two pillars in my opinion: connection and reflection. I mentioned earlier, right? These are the two things: engaging with the business and continuous improvement. The two most important things that you can take away is figure out how to get your engineers more connected to product management, UI, UX, customer service, making sure they're getting those feedback loops, getting them connected with your users, making those real human connections so that they're bought into the cause, that they understand the problems they're trying to solve and how their work ties into the big picture. And then again, very purposefully, have a culture of continuous improvement so that you're used to making changes. You're not digging yourself into these ruts and reinforcing these ruts, right? And so that when change comes, you say, well, no, that's just the way we've always done it, and it would be too expensive to change, and so on. So when the big change comes that you have to react to, you have to adapt to, it's just another change, and that's the essence of agility. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the talk. As I said, this is what I'm doing now. This is my world. So if anyone are suffering from these kind of issues and could use some coaching and some mentorship, I'd appreciate the connection. Thanks very much.